topic of my talk today is getting the state, the government, out of our lives. The Indian government plays a role in various aspects of our lives. The government is the most important actor in any modern society. In India, the government is involved in a vast array of things. The government owns banks, insurance companies, oil companies, power plants, manufacturing companies. The government runs temples, banks, restaurants, and airlines. The government has unchecked powers when it meddles with the economy. But the government is not the answer to every problem. Not in India, not in any country. In my talk today, I shall make 5 claims. My first claim. We in India have a fund of evidence around us that the government does not work properly. School teachers in public schools fail to show up to teach, and when they do show up, they fail to teach. Doctors working in government hospitals routinely fail to deliver good health care. 70% of our banking system is owned by the government. Over the last 5 years, we have had a large-scale banking crisis where government-owned banks have been incurring losses, and a significant portion of taxpayers' money is repeatedly used to bail out the banks. The bailout amount ranges from somewhere around rupees 5 to rupees 10 trillion. How big is this amount? Every rupees 1 trillion of public expenditure buys 10,000 kilometers of 4-lane highways. In agriculture, year after year, the government doles out subsidies and transfers. There is a large number of welfare schemes targeted to the farmers. A significant portion of taxpayers' money has been spent on these welfare programs. Despite that, our farmers continue to be in deep distress. Rural wages have been falling, and farmers feel compelled to commit suicides, unable to repay the loans. Our criminal justice system, which consists of our courts, our police, CBI, they're too weak. The government announced a program called the Jan Dhan Yojana, under which bank accounts were opened for millions. But evidence shows that a vast number of these accounts have zero balance, or at most they have rupees 10 in an account, which ironically has been put in by the banks themselves to reduce the number of zero balance accounts. In terms of urbanization, we need many more new cities to come up. But it is a ridiculous state of affairs that one of the poorest countries of the world has some of the costliest land in the world. Our roads are not safe for driving. India is a poor country. We have few cars, and the cars don't drive a lot. But the number of road deaths per car is more than 26 times as in the UK. The business of doing transactions in land is filled with horror stories. I have an American friend whose Indian wife has been trying for years to sell a small plot of land in a western state of India. It has taken her countless trips to India and huge amount of money spent on lawyers' expenses trying to sell that one small plot of land. Why? Because a neighbor illegally blocked access to the land, which is rightfully hers. The Indian government works through panic and packages, as explained by a friend of mine. Whenever faced with a crisis in any field, the government experiences panic and comes up with the announcement of a policy package to quickly solve the crisis. There is very little ability and effort to engage in the long, slow journey required to genuinely solve the problems. In field after field, in education, in health, in banking, in agriculture, in infrastructure, urbanization, financial inclusion, there is ample evidence from data, from anecdotes, from surveys, from research, that the government does not work properly. My claim number 2. Yet in India, we look to the government whenever there is a problem in the society. We look to the government as the answer. When we are not happy with the unemployment rate, when the unemployment rate is too high, we expect the government to create jobs. When we get concerned with high prices, inflation, we want the government to protect the prices, to control the prices. When we want to succeed as entrepreneurs, we demand that the government provides subsidies to startups. When we fear foreign competition in any field, we demand that the government offer us with some protection. When we see that the public schools are not enough for our children or they're not educating the children well, we demand greater role of the government in education. So in field after field, we see that there's evidence the government is not working properly, yet whenever there is a problem in the society, we are quick to seek government intervention. My claim number 3. How does the government respond to this? By increasing its presence in every sphere of our lives over the years, over the decades. The government decides students of which classes in school can be failed in exams and whether or not exams should be held for primary students. The government dictates what we can eat. In many Indian states today, there is a ban on cow slaughter and the commercial sale of beef. Until recently, homosexuality was a criminal offense. The government decides how e-commerce firms such as Flipkart and Amazon will do business in India. The corporate sector, the companies of India, are told that they have to mandatorily spend 2% of their earnings in activities that demonstrate social responsibility. Trading in our stock exchanges can only happen during the Indian daytime as opposed to round the clock the way it happens in developed countries. In many Indian states, the rent that the tenants need to pay the landlords is controlled by the government. In agriculture, there is a plethora of controls on how much the farmer can sell, to whom, and at what prices. There is a control on how much land a farmer can own. The government announced the demonetization program that disrupted the lives of millions, especially in the agricultural and informal sectors. There is a long list of examples from multiple sectors around us that over a period of time, the Indian government has become a giant machinery of intrusion into the lives of the citizens. My claim number 4. This is problematic for multiple reasons. And I'll talk about 3 specific reasons. Reason number 1 is, when the government intrudes in the lives of people, this hampers the freedom of individuals, of the society, of the economy. Reason number 2, large-scale expansion of the government disrupts the development of the private sector and the ability of ordinary people to climb out of poverty. I'll explain this with just 2 examples. A simple and relatively easy way for a poor woman in urban India to earn livelihood is to set up a small food stall by the roadside. But when the government starts operating canteens where meals are served at heavily subsidized prices, this takes away the ability of the poor woman to charge higher prices for the food that she's selling at her food stall. She does not have the ability to fight with the financial power of the government. This hurts her livelihood. My second example is from the airline industry. In principle, the sector is liberalized, and there are private airlines, as we all know. But the government still operates an airline, which it subsidizes heavily. This affects the ability of private airlines to cover their costs, because they know that if they increase fares, passengers may defect to Air India. Air India, on the other hand, has no incentive to charge market prices because it knows that if it incurs losses, the government will cover the losses. In fact, it is very much interested to charge lower prices to increase the market share and justify the role to the nation that is offering an important service to lakhs of people. The upshot of this is that private airlines, no matter how good they are, it's difficult for them to make money, and they struggle to keep themselves out of the bankruptcy court. The third reason why it's problematic when the government intervenes so much in private lives is that when the government focuses its resources and time on too many things, this reduces its focus and attention on things that need critical attention. For example, law and order, criminal justice, national defense, our roads, air quality, water quality. When the government tries to do too many things, it fails to deliver the basic tasks. Our army's equipment is outmoded. Our public schools are not providing children with the kind of skills they need. Our roads are not in good shape. Our courts do not work properly. We have many issues with air quality, water quality. We need to get the government to focus on performing the basic tasks, the basic functions that the market cannot deliver, instead of asking the government to focus its attention on multiple objectives. When we ask the government to do too many things, just as asking an individual to do too many things, the consequence is that none of the things will be done well. My fifth and final claim: perhaps we need a new freedom movement to get the government out of the private lives of citizens. Freedom is powerful. Free market is powerful. Unleashing the energy of the private sector of the free market can do wonders for the society. Creativity, innovation, individual freedom, these are good things that need to be encouraged. Most of the great achievements of mankind, from as far back as we know, have been because of the drive and creativity of free persons. Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Mother Teresa. No government told them to do what they did. And the list is endless. In India, for the longest of time, we have been lamenting the lack of telephones. The Department of Telecommunications tried for years to achieve the objective of one phone per village. In the late 1990s, we got the entry of new private energy, new business models, new innovations into this field. No one in the Department of Telecommunications and no government-owned private public sector firm would have come up with business model innovations such as prepaid SIM cards sold by millions of shops across the country. Today, we are perhaps a few years away from one phone per person. Societies that have prospered around the world are also ones where individual freedom is valued and where free markets have flourished. The most prosperous countries around the world are liberal democracies. In summary, let me recount the main claims I'm making in this talk. We in India have a fund of evidence around us that government does not work properly. And yet, for every problem in the society, we look to the government as the answer. The Indian government has become a giant machinery of intrusion into the lives of people. This is problematic. When the government focuses on too many things, this reduces its attention on things that need critical government attention. We need to remind ourselves of the value of individual freedom and of the power of free market to achieve growth and prosperity. We need to ask less of the government and remind ourselves that when the government tries to do too many things, the cost of doing that can be quite high. Let me end my talk with just 3 words that I want you to take away from this. Freedom works well. The government, not necessarily. Thank you.